Hey there. So my next guest is the president of a collegiate esports VALORANT organization. They're focused on VALORANT at the moment. And it's really cool because his background before this was he was in consulting in esports. And before this, he was in traditional sports. So he's got this blend of knowledge of how to do kind of the sports organization in the college scene. And he's bringing it over into the college scene for esports. And this was a fun conversation. He gives a ton of great advice. I really enjoyed this one. I know you're all going to love it too. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Kiernan Ensor. Hey there, Kiernan. How's it going?
Not too bad. Not too bad. How about yourself?
It's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas, which is more I can say than most people in this country. How about you?
Same here in Atlantic City. We have beautiful sunshine. The water's the wind off the ocean's rolling in, so it smells wonderful, actually. So it's a perfect day here in New Jersey.
Beautiful. All right, Kiernan, I like it in the show. Just start right into it. So why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Kiernan Ensor. I'm currently the president of Conference One. I have spent most of my professional life working in college athletics and college esports. I really love working with students and players, and it's just a passion of mine. It combines some skill sets that I have and passion for my work, and I'm a part of the nerd culture, which is something I always wanted to be when I grew up. So as a movie lover, as an anime lover and watcher, this is just a awesome experience to be on this show today and to work in a field like esports.
I love it. All right, we got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, though, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm going to ask you, just like I ask everybody else, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you, Kiernan?
I'm pretty much I would fall in that 6 to 7 range on an average day. If the mood is right and we're having a blast, I can easily pump that bad boy up to an 8 or a 9. No qualms about it. So it's what allows me to fit into the esports culture as an individual. So
I love it. That's exactly why I asked that question. All right. So this is the Gamerpreneur podcast. So I am going to need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
I first started playing video games with my first actual console was N64. So, classic, iconic. I got the transparent green one. It came out with like DK, Donkey Kong 64 and all that. First game was Majora's Mask that I played to completion. Which, let me tell you, as a game to not start with, that's the worst one, because it's highly complicated. I'm like, if all games are like this, I'm done. All right, I can't do this this time traveling nonsense for.
Not to mention the themes in that are not meant for children.
No. But you don't really know that at the when you're playing it as a kid. You're like, oh yeah, we put on fun masks. Let's go around. It's only the end of the earth. Whatever, no big deal. If I don't save it in 72 hours, everyone dies. What's the issue here? So it's just one of those things but it was a great experience, and then got into the Pokemons and everything of that nature, and I was just hooked. I was hooked from there on.
Wonderful. All right. And I'm assuming you've continued to play since then, since where you've ended up.
Yep. So a lot of RPGs, huge RPG fan, JRPGs. So played most of the Final Fantasies, played, Mass Effect, Dragon Age. Those are some of my all-time favorites. Played a lot of my RTSs. So Warcraft 3, Warcraft 2 actually was one of the first ones I started with, both StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2. Diablos, just constantly played throughout. I went through a Gears of War phase, which I think everyone my age did, and Call of Duty phase, but those have long since passed me by.
Phase? I still love Gears of War.
I played I can honestly say I buy the game now for the story. I'm like, I play the campaign and I'm like, oh, this is so good. And then I'm like, oh, I'll play one game of multiplayer. And I'm like, do I still use the shotgun? Okay, good. I can do this. And then I play like one map, get killed, and I'm like, I'm done with this nonsense. I don't need this anymore in my life.
So what do you play today, if anything?
Right now, I play a lot of League of Legends still to this day. That's my, competitive drive, one where I sit down and, just, bang it out. Played Borderlands 3 recently, played Dragon Age. They released it for Xbox, so I played that one. I had a fun with that. Just got my Switch for Christmas. Finally gifted that to myself. So caught up on Pokemon Sword and Shield. Really excited for some of the other games. And Super Smash Brothers Ultimate is my casual. Let's just have fun in the apartment and beat each other up.
Beautiful. All right. Now, this seems to be a tough question for gamers, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you had to choose one game as your all-time favorite, which one is it?
I would say the original Dragon Age. If just because it had such replayability, so many just class designs and the story was rich, and from an RPG standpoint, it was such a massive world. The DLC was amazing, and everything of that nature. So I love the scene. I love the world that it created, and it was just so unique at the time. Even coming from other RPGs, I was like, all right, this is Mass Effect, but it's taken to another level of just intricacy and depth, and I really enjoyed that.
Okay, great. All right. Let's get over to the preneur part because I'm really interested in talking about what you're doing now. But again, before we get to that, you gave us a little bit during the intro, but could you please go through your professional background? How did you end up with Conference One?
Sure. Well, if we take it back to when I was an up and comer youngster before I became in the esports world a boomer. I really started off in college athletics. Ever since I was old enough to hold a broom, I worked in college athletics. Sweeping the floors during timeouts, running stats to people back when that was a thing. They used to call around to all the games to actually find out what the score was because apps on our phone didn't exist. And I would answer those, and I would send around, and I would write them out, and the PA announcer would, scream them out to the fans. So I just always loved being around the college scene, the college athletes. So I gained a lot of experience, did a lot of different odd jobs, tickets, marketing, promotion. By the time I got into my college career, I had a fairly extensive background, so I decided to try something else out. I did development during my time period in undergrad. So did a lot of the donor databasing, cold call reach outs, networking events, got really familiar with people, learned how to talk to people, which is, I always say, is one of the most underdeveloped skills in the college atmosphere. Took that, got a couple jobs that I really enjoyed doing right out of college, and then transitioned back into a full-time athletics career as I took the position of being director of championships at the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. It was there I realized that you need to really have a passion for what you do, because I loved my work. I love the student athletes. I love the coaches. I love the administrators, but I'm just not a sports guy. Like at the end of the day, the last thing I want to do is spend 12 hours watching baseball, basketball, any really sport outside of college basketball specifically. And if you're going to be in a department where you need to work with a lot of students and you need to watch a lot of sports, you better love it. I say this to everyone. If you love sports and you really think you can do it for work, then do it. But if you're just thinking this is a good business to get into, please don't. It's long days, late nights, weekend work. It's bad as a sort of work-life balance. So I found myself at a crossroads where I was like, I love what I do, but I don't love what I am doing. And it's, I took that and I was like, all right, let me give myself a year, figure it out. I sort of studied esports because that's what I was watching. I was watching a lot of StarCraft 2. I was watching a lot of LCS back when they were just the same league and NA and EU. And I was watching a lot of Overwatch League, and I was like, this is a lot of parallels to sports. This is growing in the college scene. Can I take my knowledge base of being a nerd, being weird, watching this for the 6-7 years at that point in time, and make it into a career? And it turns out I could. And I started my own consultancy and went from there. And when my time at Canisius came to an end, where I was running a program up in Buffalo, I was just fielding a call for my consultancy practice, and they were like, "Hey, listen, can we bring you on full time to run Conference One?" And I was like, "Yeah, we can do that. We can absolutely do that." So
Wonderful. All right. And so what is it you do with Conference One?
Yeah, so Conference One is a premier collegiate esports league focusing primarily on VALORANT for right now. We do have plans to expand in the future. So my job as president is to make sure that well, right now it's to do a little bit of everything, but it's, to make sure that we get production up and running, that we are, we're paving the way forward on business development, that we're managing and acquiring different relationships in the space that we need. So managing publisher relationships, managing sponsorship relationships, making sure that we're fielding the broadcast teams that we need to do, that we're on track with our branding and social media. And then from a macro perspective, I design conceptually the league structures and how we're going to actually implement it, and then leave it up to my team to do it on a day-to-day basis and get that done.
Okay. What do you think is the most surprising thing you've had to learn or had to do while being the president of this organization?
Photoshop. Yeah, Photoshop's got to be the number one right there. If you want to work in any sort of marketing or promotional field, and you're like, oh yeah, I write great copy, or I do this, do yourself a favor, just learn Photoshop, not to like an expert degree, because you kill yourself just having to do all that all day long. At least I would, because I'm not a creative. But if you do it to a certain enough degree where you can just make quick edits and you don't always have to ask people to rely on stuff, your life will be substantially easier, especially if you can like just design a simple Twitter post, Instagram post, and Facebook post. You'll be better served for your entire career.
I love that answer. I'll admit I learned Photoshop because my wife was angry at me and stormed out with a group of friends to go to a bar one night. I'm like, screw that. I'm going to learn Photoshop.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. You don't think of it inherently off the top of your head, like, oh, what do I need to learn? I'm going to manage a company, and it's like Photoshop will make your life easier. Whether you're promoting yourself or getting yourself in line to another position, just learn Photoshop. It's not the hardest thing. It's hard to do at the expert level, but the basic and intermediate levels, you can get a pretty good handle on pretty quickly.
For sure. Okay. Now, Kiernan, what makes you good at this position? Because you've got this background in sports and but like you're in this world of esports now, and you said they're kind of the same, but I'm sure your position is different than anything you've done before.
Yeah, so I would say the big one right off the bat that makes me good at what I do is it's the idea phase, right? I feel like in the idea phase, and whether it's collegiate esports as a whole, a lot of bad ideas just seem to make it past the filter. Because whether people think it's the wild, wild west, or it's so new, or it's never been done before, the answer is most of these things have been done in either other businesses or other areas, and you should learn lessons from them before trying to implement them in a new space. So I really excel in bringing concepts to the table, refining them, defining them, and then handing them off to either be executed or executing them myself. So I would say that's the biggest one that I've come across as being, a key to success, is doing that really well, filtering out the bad, keeping the good, and knowing that you can't accomplish everything. And I think that would be the other one, filtering down. When we first started Conference One, the big question was, how many game titles do we do in our first year? And I was like, 1. And everyone from my board of directors to my CEO and everyone else was like, why would you only do 1 game? And I was like, we're coming into a space, we're going to be brand new. We're going to have no reputation. People are going to question our motives of why we're entering. And at the end of the day, we're going to prove ourselves. And if we do it and we focus just on 1 game and prove that we're capable, we know exactly what we're doing, we'll do well, we'll excel, we'll grow. And so far it's worked really, really well.
Beautiful. I love that. Now, Kiernan, part of my show, like the big part of my show, is trying to get advice out of my guests that somebody somewhere in my audience hopefully listens to you and goes, this sounds awesome. I would love to be that guy. I'd love to do what that guy is doing. How do they do that? How do they follow in your footsteps?
Well, I'm from Jersey, so I am inherently a negative person. I inherently am always like the guy who shoots down things and like, no, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. So I would say if you really want to be a high-level executive, or get into a position where you start managing and working with other people at a certain level, what I would say is, first off, recognize the weaknesses of your own idea. Take time before you ever present to someone else poking holes in your own thing. Play devil's advocate against yourself. Because oftentimes when you start doing that, you're starting to see the outsider's perspective on what you're presenting. And I think that's what so many, especially young professionals and people in the esports world, fail to do, is recognize that inherently there is a flaw in their plan, that it was easily fixed and would either make the idea viable or they would recognize it and retool it. So a lot of what I do with my young staff is say, hey guys, listen, it's a great idea. but that's going to end up costing us more money than it could ever possibly make us. And the net benefit isn't actually going to excel in, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So play devil's advocate with yourself and, really think through all your ideas. I think it's I always say it takes me about a week before I present a new idea to a person, from concept to planning it. And I'm just not even talking about putting together a pitch deck and all that. I'm just saying, before I go to a meeting and go, okay, what am I going to do? What are we doing this week? What are we doing in the biz dev side of things? I'm like, let me have a week to really play with it, formulate it. Then when I propose it, people are like, what about this? And then I'm like, oh, no, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I have. This is what I'm proposing. This is why that isn't this. And I think if people just took time and really just critically evaluate their own ideas, they would do so well. And it's not being skeptical about yourself. It's not having self-doubt. Like, I know by the time when I present my idea, it's going to do well, or I think it's going to be well received. It's about knowing that, when you wrote in college or whenever you're doing anything else like that, you always did drafts. You always did first draft, rough draft, and everything of that nature. But so often we will present our rough draft of our idea or rough draft of our thought process. And if you take it 2 or 3 steps more, you'll be amazed how quickly people respond to your ideas. They'll go from being like, oh yeah, let's talk about that more, to being like, hey, listen, let's get a one-on-one. Let's deep dive this. Let's schedule some time. Let's put together a deal point outline or something like that. And it will just help you succeed and climb the ladder. Because most people don't want to go through the idea phase with you. They want to skip from rough draft to middle copy, or damn near editing level of an idea. So if you can skip that for them, they're going to find value in you.
That is so true right there. Yes, like my consulting firm, basically all I do is help people build their plans. They show me their plan. I'm like, yeah, no, you can't give this to anybody. Let's work on it. And then after a few iterations, then you present it to somebody. And if you think you know the answer, if you hope you know the answer, if you believe, you're not going to get whatever it is you want. You have to know the answer. Like, oh God, Kiernan, that was a good one. Let's go back in time. I want to go back in time with you for a second, okay? Back to when you were first starting your consulting firm, because I think you said it was focused on esports, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. How long ago was that when you first started that?
2016. So coming up on 4 or 5 years ago.
4 or 5 years ago. Okay. We're going to go back in time, and you're going to go up to little Kiernan back then. All right. And you're going to tell little Kiernan everything he's going to get to experience in the esports world. You're going to tell him all the wonderful things, all the bad, and everything. But there's one thing he has to know in order to make his life bigger, better, faster, more, just awesome. What is it you tell him?
Market yourself. Market yourself is the big one. I was lucky that I was blessed with just in a lot of endemic contexts in the college space. Like I created a niche firm. I knew exactly what I was doing. I didn't try to do a whole lot, but at the end of the day, I only ended up having like 20, 30 clients over the course of a couple of years. But as a single sole practitioner, that was enough to keep me doing just fine. But if I really wanted to, I could have built out a really tremendous practice, been first to the post in the East Coast over here, had a lot of, grown into a real business. But I was fine just using the contacts I already had. I had always been good at networking, but I had never thought about the step beyond that, and that's marketing yourself, really putting yourself out there. Like, be aggressive. I don't care if you're the shyest person in the world, you have social anxiety, cold messaging someone on LinkedIn or doing something like that, you can get 100 no's. Who cares? You're not seeing them face to face. Just do it. If you get 3 yeses, the amount of feedback and the amount of opportunities that will all be open to you is unbelievable. And if you do that every 2 to 3 months, you can really grow something. So I would say you just got to get into the habit of marketing yourself and putting yourself into a community.
Absolutely. I think that's how we ended up on the show together. I think I sent you a message and, oh, look, here we are.
Exactly. So it really doesn't hurt. And just say yes, just do it. Just have fun.
All right. Now, Kiernan, I want to get a little more personal with you if possible. You see, I believe that we learn the most in our life from our failures, not necessarily our successes. Because when you succeed, you may not know what happened, but you're like, hey, I did it, right? But when you fail, you got to take a look at it. You got to be able to get past it in order to move forward and succeed the next time. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest failure in life was it took me longer than it should have to graduate college, get my undergrad degree. And the reason was I was a lot like a lot of people in the esports world. I was exceptionally brilliant. I did well in school. School came easy to me. Didn't matter whether it was math, science, English, history. I did well in all those subjects, but that inherently made me lazy. Not lazy that I wouldn't put in a hard day's work. Like I always did well, like whether it was went to a job or did anything of that nature, I always did well in those sort of aspects. But it made me lazy academically and not value the time I needed to put into things. So what should have taken me 4 years ended up taking me closer to 6. And it's not because I couldn't have done the classes. It was because, oh, do I need to show up today? And that really set me further behind my peers, in all honesty. If I could have gotten into the esports scene 2 years earlier, I can only imagine where I would have been. I have a best friend who I went to high school and college with, and right now he's the general manager of the Los Angeles Valiant and all the Immortals teams over there in California. And he had no sports background. He had nothing. He was a manager at a chain restaurant just out of college. He spent 6 months doing that, applied for an assistant coaching gig back in 2014, 2015. By the time he is where he is today, he's now GM, doing it with one of the largest organizations in North America. And he's able to do that because he got in on the ground floor. Whereas myself and everyone who's coming after me is going to have to start at a much later stage. So applying myself and recognizing that time is probably the most precious commodity, whether it's time with your family, time in school, what have you. Just value that. Put time and effort into everything you do, whether you hate it or whether you love it. Just put the time and effort that it deserves, because in the end, the things that you put time into, you're always going to succeed at. You'll always find success in it in the long run.
So true. Thank you for sharing that, Kiernan. Kind of on the flip side, what is something you're working to improve on in yourself today?
Working on to improve myself today, I would say I'm still learning to be a better marketer about myself. Still doing, more on social media. That's always a big one. Once again, I'm from Jersey, and last thing I needed was to put my unfiltered thoughts on any social media platform ever. And that's why I never really got into it, whether it was Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. But nowadays, in a field that is so driven by social contact and communities in niche little parts of the internet, you need to be active in it, and you need to know the lingo, and you need to be do well in it. So social media marketing myself are probably the two big ones. Grinding, having that grinding mentality. There's a lot of articles out there about, don't grind your way through your 20s and your 30s or something like that. I would say I'm fine with the idea of grinding if it's something you love, if you're building something for yourself. So in my case, I'm building a business that, can grow under me and I can really turn into something. And that's something I want to do. That's what I would do on my personal time if I had any. So understanding when to grind and when to take breaks is another big one. But yeah, I think just always be self-critical and self-evaluate yourself is really the key to doing anything. And, ask me again in 6 months, I'm sure I'll have a completely different answer about what I'm working to improve myself on. Not that I finished working on the other areas. I'll just have another perspective on what I need to do.
All right, wonderful. Kiernan, this has been a fantastic interview. How do people find you? How do they reach out to you on social media, contact information, all that, please?
Sure. Yeah. So the easiest one to find me on is LinkedIn. I am the only Kiernan Ensor in the world. So if you type my name in there, you're not going to find another search result. I accept anyone that wants to shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Bradford, you can attest to this. I'm responsive. I do respond. So if anyone wants to find me there, on Twitter, the best account to follow me on is CF1 Esports. I manage the account for my company. So if you ever really do want to DM me there, you can. I do have a social. It's CF1 Kiernan _Kiernan. That would be the other one. And yeah, those would be the three easiest ones to get me at.
Beautiful. All right. Now, as we're wrapping this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share or anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
No, I think it's great. I just encourage everyone to really, enjoy what they do and do it well.
Beautiful. Kiernan, thank you so much for coming on with us today. I genuinely do appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.